And happy Wednesday out there to the world. This is Sam, and with me I've got Zebulon Dak and Ross. Welcome, gentlemen.
Welcome.
It is been an interesting weekend. There was some interruption. There was some hubbubaloo, and they got over it. They played football. It was amazing.
It was amazing. It was a weekend like I'd never seen.
Yeah, it's interesting. So obviously, we're talking about the comments by the President of the United States. Not only did he say it at a rally, a campaign rally in the state of Alabama, he also tweeted about it, which is his favorite thing. And it was I think a really interesting thing to see how teams reacted. We saw the Seahawks and Titans react in a way, or not react, depending on how you want to look at it. And then you also, unfortunately, if you're a Seahawks fan, which if you're listening and if you're one of us, you probably are, they suffered their 13th road loss in September under Pete Carroll. There were some good things, there were some bad things. The offense scored, the defense allowed scores. The Godfather of the team, Kam Chancellor, he was saying that the defense needs to stop bickering at the opposing side. It was an interesting weekend, and I think a lot of us are still digesting it. And I know that fans of the NFL are kind of caught all over the place. Is that kind of how you would think?
Yeah, I think that's where I'm at. I had a hard time. To be honest, I didn't digest even the game as well as I had. It's funny because we say it shouldn't be a distraction. It was all over by the end of the thing, but I don't know. Like somehow this week it just doesn't feel as much about football.
Now, do you think that's because of? I mean, to be fair, it was probably an entertaining game. I think for us, we're probably harder for us to judge it accurately. But I would think that a game where you have a 33-26 score, that's going to result in an interesting game for a lot of people. But I kind of agree with you, Ross. It was a good game. I kind of agree with you, Ross, that the things that have been happening since that have continued to permeate not just in a football sense, but a political sense. And that's one of our topics today. But it's something that a lot of sports fans are very uncomfortable with. Zeb, I know we've been going back and forth, not only on our website, but in chat and text, and we have talked about other people that we've interacted with or people that you've interacted with and kind of shown their comments. How has this been for you? Because you have a lot of fans, you have a lot of people that your Facebook is I think in the 100,000. Is that sound about right?
I don't know about that, but it was I don't know. Sunday I had a lot of fun on Sunday. Even though we lost the game, which obviously I don't like, I had a really good time watching the game. I had fun. I enjoyed it. It felt different than usual. I'm not exactly sure if that had to do with all the other stuff, all the off-the-field distraction stuff. But I don't know. I had a fun time watching football this weekend. And I had a really fun time on Facebook letting people argue on my page about what was happening, and being semi-involved in the arguments. I don't know, it was kind of exhilarating. It was kind of every once in a while, maybe once a year or so, something big happens that sparks the giant debate on Facebook for me. And sometimes it's frustrating as hell, and sometimes it's enjoyable because you know how right you are. And this was one of those times.
And for those of you that don't know, Zeb has apparently a lot of fans because he has people that he didn't even know that he friend requested or accepted who find up on his feed, and they're just there. So
somebody always comes out of the woodwork, and it's like one mutual friend, and it's like somebody you barely know, and it's their racist uncle or something, and they somehow your post pops up in their feed. And of course, they have to chime in about it, right?
Right, of course.
But I'm pretty sure not to get all tinfoil hat on you, but I'm pretty sure Facebook they planted at least one person into my feed that had no idea who they were, no mutual friends. Their profile looked fake, and it just so happened to be a post they made about how the players were disrespectful and how important the national anthem is and how important the flag is and how it's so much more important than whatever it is these players have going on in their personal lives. And it just felt like a setup. You know what I mean? Like,
you saying Facebook is catfishing everybody?
I sure do think so. Yeah.
Well, I agree, and that's one of the reasons why this is our topic for at least one of the 4 that we're going to do today. And it was an interesting weekend because usually I like to rewatch like the condensed game, so I at least kind of have like a feeling, okay, what did I miss? What did I not see like the first time around? And I'm not an expert. I just like to do it once, get like a general idea. And it was interesting about this, and it kind of leads us into topic number 1. And Zeb, we're going to hit you off with this one, but topic number 1, it's not how you start, but how you finish. But will the Seahawks start to finish? One of the things, if you followed the Seahawks for a while with Pete Carroll, is that Pete Carroll has always been, can you win in the first quarter? Can you win in the second quarter? Can you win in the third quarter? Can you win in the fourth quarter? And all his players are always saying no, no, no until the fourth quarter. Part of that goes back into the heroics of Russell Wilson. He had, for the most part, a very good statistical game. But Zeb, do you question if these Seahawks will be able to finish these games?
I mean, sure, I question it. But at the same time, there is that sort of like calmness to it because this literally has happened virtually every season since Pete Carroll has been here. At least the seasons where we did turn it around, we always start slow to some degree, whether it's 2-2 or not scoring touchdowns like we want to the first couple of games. As has been noted, we're historically bad on the road in September under Pete Carroll. And that's held true so far this season. Obviously, specifically, you can look at the things that are happening and decide whether those things are trending towards getting better. One thing in particular was that obviously after another slow start this past weekend, we were able to eventually move the ball, score points. Russell had arguably one of his best days statistically throwing the football. So that's encouraging for sure. And again, as far as like on the defense goes, as they got tired, the Titans were able to bust off some longer runs against them. If they can somehow switch that over and flip-flop that so that we're scoring points early in the game, keeping the defense off the field, making the other team throw on us instead of running the ball, then yeah, we should be able to get back on track and follow the trend of starting slow but finishing strong and winning in the fourth quarter.
Ross, what about you? And I know we had talked about it, and you had mentioned a couple of things about wanting to talk about the defense, and that plays a role into this because this is like one of the first few times that we've really seen the run defense not give up one big run but multiple big runs, and that I was talking and thinking like, wow, that run by DeMarco Murray, this might be it. That might be the one that brings our back. They got back into it, but what do you think about the Seahawks' ability to finish?
I'm not really concerned about the ability to finish. I'm more like the opposite. I feel like they've emphasized so much about finishing that they've forgotten how to start. Because it's on every level, right? We start games slow. We start seasons slow. Russell starts slow. 4 of 11 for 24 yards or something in the first half. There's something to be said, like that philosophy about finishing. And I think they do a pretty good job there of finishing. But problem is, if you don't start fast as well, you can dig yourself some pretty big holes. And we've seen them, we've seen them come back and make amazing comebacks, but come up just short. But if that hole hadn't been so deep to start with, maybe we wouldn't have been in such a dire strait to begin with. And I just feel like yeah, they've just gone so much on emphasizing it's how you finish everything. Other than that philosophy, there, except for that mantra, everything else they have, the way that the team is built, is actually built for a fast start. They've built, the defense is obviously better right now. It's with the defensive line we've got, and with Sherman, it's kind of built to defend against the pass. But if you let somebody build a big lead, then they're going to be running and running and running. We've only got 3 defensive tackles on there. We've got, we only like to have 2 real linebackers out there. We'd be better off if we could start fast and let teams play from behind, not us be the one playing from behind.
Yeah. And to your point, that makes me think about, like, if the Seahawks played like a 63-minute game, we would win like 90% of our games. It's amazing what the Seahawks can do when their backs are against the wall, when the clock's running out. And that reminds me of the San Francisco game. They had 7 minutes on the clock, and they just moved the field, scored, and I was like annoyed the entire time. I was cheering, but in the back of my mind, I was like, man, I knew this was going to happen. I hate it. Because I have faith that they're going to score, and we talked about that last week. They scored, and then it's like, but you gave them too much time. And, it was a home game. They closed it out, so that was great. But I think that's something that, Ross, to your point, and Zeb, to your point, it's like, this is what they do. This is how the team is built, whether you agree with the dynamics of how it's been built or not. That's just kind of who they are. At the same point, have they focused so much on how they can finish a game out that they are not doing the right things? And it's almost the exact opposite of a Mike Holmgren team. A Mike Holmgren team, like in the first 5 minutes, 7 minutes of a game, was nearly unstoppable. Like, I remember they would go with their scripted plays, and they'd be like the 10 to 12 most beautiful scripted plays. Like, defenses wouldn't know what to do. Seahawks would just march down the field, get us touchdown, and then you'd hope they would have scored enough to close it out. And that was kind of always that concern. They started great but never finished strong. Whereas this team historically has started slow and, get stronger as the game goes along.
The stat on the screen last week, they've gone now 16 games in a row without scoring on their opening drive. 16 games, that's a full season.
That's pretty awful.
That's no bueno.
Now
It is no bueno.
What I will say is, and that I find to be promising, even though this is our topic, they're close. They're so close to being a team that could potentially just like run away with stuff. That was true, I think, in the San Francisco game. The first 2 drives, they were 2 drops away from scoring touchdowns. It would have been on their opening drive, so that would have broken that streak. But even in this game, they were very close. They were so close in a few aspects. And had they had something go their way, or if they just prepared a little bit better, we might not have seen, the way that this game broke down. Because there are a bunch of things that I think went wrong for the Seahawks. Most of it was their own doing because they just didn't play the game well enough. I'm not saying that they deserve to win, but it's those things that this game was a lot closer, not just based upon the score, but based upon how the Seahawks were finally kind of playing towards the end. But it was an issue of the offense started to click, but then the defense didn't, and they can never seem to be in sync.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah.
It's a slightly more optimistic evaluation than I'd come up with, but I see what you're saying.
Well, how would you spin that then?
I mean, like I said, they are very, very close on some things, but I see some of the same things coming up and up and up again. And, like, for example, this past game, a lot of people were saying that the defense was tired, but I don't think the defense was tired because there was a third quarter where we gave up 21 points. They just had their halftime break. The offense came back, had their best drive of the season, took 6 or 7 minutes off the clock. So the defense hadn't played for 30 minutes. Then they went out there and gave up a lot. I don't think they were tired. I think there's some, like, I think Kam Chancellor senses it well. I mean, he blamed it on, something, not blamed it on, but he'd like some of the bickering to go away. There seems to be something not quite. I still think it's fixable. I agree, maybe, but I don't.
I think you're right, though. I don't think they weren't tired at that point in the game. They sure looked like, on that play in particular, that they weren't putting forth the effort that they could have to maybe not let that happen.
Dave Wyman line, he did a pretty good explanation, and I buy the explanation. But something else, when I was watching Pete Carroll's press conference from maybe yesterday, something that kind of struck me, and it seemed to be kind of a common theme around. I kind of feel like with everything else that was going on this week, I think a lot of teams kind of felt that this week they're putting some things a little bit on the back burner, not consciously, but like Pete Carroll seemed to be saying, look, like last week, we stayed in the locker room, and hopefully this week we're back to real football. And I just feel like I think there was some intensity missing last week. I think there was a lot of, and I don't even know if that's a bad thing. I think the country's going through an interesting time right now, and I think basically that big things are happening, and maybe some people thought that maybe what they had to actually, the discussion they had before the game, maybe on the overall scheme of things was maybe more important. I just feel like maybe some of the intensity was lacking. Maybe, I don't know.
I think it's one of those things that whenever a team loses, a lot of the questions that you want to ask are free. Now, some of them might be sillier than others because they really have no relevance to the game. But I think that brings up an interesting point because of this dynamic, how politics has been thrust into sports more so than we've ever seen. It does leave a lot to question. And we're going to talk about that. So we're gonna move ahead, and we're going to talk about the fact that we've got Sunday Night Football coming to town. Sunday Night Football is topic number 2. Comes to Seattle. But which team will we see for both the Colts and the Seahawks? This is a Andrew Luck-less team. It's going to be led by Jacoby Brissett. He's the quarterback that the Colts acquired from the Patriots. Seahawks are going to be playing at home, which they traditionally do really well. It's a primetime game, which they do even better in. But it's going to be raining. There's the chance of rain. And Russell Wilson, even though he lives in the Seattle area, doesn't have great games in the rain. The Colts have been pretty much steamrolled. Their defense has scored. They don't have a strong defense. But the Seahawks team, we're not sure what we're going to see. Ross, what's your take? What do you expect to see from this game?
It's a little bit of a mystery. Brissett just a couple of weeks ago was the number 3 quarterback for New England, but last year he played a couple of games, right? Brady was out, and then whatever was out.
Garbanzo Bean.
That's his name. Yep.
Jimmy Garbanzo Bean.
I'd like to buy a vowel guy. Like he was out, and Brissett shocked people, right? Right. Brissett shocked people. Won last week. I think he might be one of those people who's just naturally a winner, right? The game he might. I don't think he's an Andrew Luck level. I don't know. Wow, we could debate whether how good Andrew Luck is as well, but I think Brissett's kind of naturally one of those winning kind of guys. So I think the game would be a little bit closer than people are expecting. I expect him to be able to throw the ball a little bit. I think he's going to have some ability. I think their running backs aren't really anything to worry about, but I think they're going to have a little bit of a spark. I think we're going to crush them eventually. But I think it's going to be more of an entertaining game, especially the first half, because we're going to start slow. They're going to make it a game. Those young quarterbacks, on the team who don't know they're supposed to be intimidated by the beastie Seahawks. And, some of I don't think we're as intimidated as we once were. On the Seahawks side, I'm hoping that, offense has its mojo back. But how we got our mojo back on offense last week wasn't really Seahawks football. So I'm still curious to see what the running game does. I don't know. Don't know what to expect there. I expect Carson maybe to finally have an over 100-yard game. Maybe we'll see.
That would be nice. Zeb, what about you?
I'm gonna start on the back side of this whole thing. If we lose to these Colts in Seattle on primetime television, we got a serious problem, right?
Well, you'll see the Rats leaving the ship then.
And we'll be 1-3 at that point. And that's not where you want to be. I mean, you can lose some close games early and be 1-3 and feel pretty good about things, but in this situation, if that's what happens, I'm definitely concerned at that point. So I have to believe that we're going to see the Seahawks that we know and love Sunday night, for all the reasons you mentioned, Ross. This is our kind of game. This is the kind of game where our veteran defense should be able to kind of just eat them up, use all of their experience and all their tools to just stop a team that isn't necessarily very good. And I kind of, we've talked about this. We've gone back and forth. When we go to more of a spread up-tempo offense, we move the ball and we score points. So we'll probably start in more of our typical run-heavy toughness offense. But I have a feeling if that doesn't work right away, we'll see them change things up and kind of let Russell loose on them. And if that happens, I have confidence that we'll be able to put up decent numbers on these guys.
What do you say when I tell you that the Colts have lost to the Cardinals in OT, the Rams in the first game of the year, and then they beat Cleveland when they had a 31-14 lead with 10 minutes to go. Cleveland comes back, scores 2 touchdowns, makes it a 31-28 game. Does that change your opinion, just hearing who they played and the scores?
No, not really. It's been a weird year like that, I think. Like there's kind of not a lot of for sure's, and a lot of teams that you think would beat certain other teams, things have gone the opposite direction. I feel like it's more about us than it is about them at this point. This is our kind of game. This is our atmosphere. This is where we want to be. So I'm more concerned about us executing properly and doing the things we got to do. I mean, yeah, anything could happen. That Brissett looks good. He looks like a playmaker. It wouldn't surprise me to see him, do some good things. I'm talking like Trump. Very good things.
Hugely, bigly.
But whatever. It's not the Patriots. It's not the Packers. It's the Colts with a backup quarterback. Like that, to me, that's just an equation that ends up in our favor unless we really screw it up.
Have they ruled on whether Frank Gore is still allowed to use his walker or not?
Even if he doesn't matter. He'll bust a 15-yard run against us, and everyone will have clinched buttholes for one play.
I just didn't know you were allowed to use a walker.
Yeah, I mean, I'm conflicted. I'm an eternal optimist when it comes to the Seahawks team, just because I love so much of the players and what they do. I think there are concerns, not enough to be so worried, but I think one of the things is you have so many things that the Seahawks traditionally will have in their favor. Home game, primetime game, energized crowd, a team that plays well, but it's potentially going to be raining, which is not Seahawks' favorite because they're not a dominant run team this version. We don't know what we're going to see before the game. Pete Carroll alluded to that he wants the team to come together and focus on football. Kam Chancellor is saying, the defense needs to stop bickering with the opposing offense. They need to just focus on what they do. We saw that in some flare-ups in this game with Tennessee. There's a lot of things that I'm not sure what's going to happen, and we don't know what's going to happen with the protest. What are players going to do? What is the Seahawks team going to do? Because there was conflict about that, and we'll talk about that when we get to topic 4, but I'm hoping for a really good Seahawks game. I'm not going to be there. My wife and my mother-in-law are going to go in the tickets that I have. But
what?
Yeah, I know. But it will lead.
And you're going to their knitting class?
No, I got kids, man. You got to quid pro quo. You got to make some trades to have freedom later in life. So
Okay.
This is a trading chip. This is how it works in my family.
Okay.
But
Okay, cool.
But I think this will be a really interesting game because I think this is kind of a defining point to say what kind of team we're going to be. And not to say that this season hinges on this game, but it will continue to
Yeah.
have to show the trend. What
If
team are
we're
we going to
1-3
be?
after this, we're it is, yeah.
And the Seahawks have never been 1-3. They've been 0-2. They've been 1-2. They've been 2-2, but they've never been 1-3. And that's going to be really interesting to
Ever? You mean under Carroll?
Under this Seahawks with Richard and Russell and all these guys, they've never been 1-3.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean they've been 0-2.
I don't expect we're gonna. I mean, things would have to go pretty bad for us to go 1-3, to be honest. But it's a crazy year though so far, isn't it?
I think that's true as well. Like for example, in the 16 games they had last week, there were 11 underdogs that won. Vegas made out really, really well. Betting fans did not, but that's how crazy it was. The Bears beat the Steelers. There's all these kinds of crazy games. Tampa Bay got steamrolled. The Vikings destroyed whoever they played, and I only know that because I sat Adam Thielen. So, that's just the kind of year it is, right?
Yeah.
I sat Jordan Howard.
Exactly. See, why would any of us do that?
I read that 70% of people did see Jordan Howard, so I don't feel that bad.
All right. Well, let's move along, and this is kind of going to lead us into the sports and politics, but not really. But this is topic number 3. This is the Homer Corner, and the question is, what would ever stop you from being a Seahawks Homer? And this is not necessarily related to anything political, but just as a fan, we are all fans of the team, probably first and foremost. We have players that we enjoy and root for a little bit more than others. But what would it take? You're obviously a fan of this team. We've talked previously about, what's going to happen with this team based upon the concerns about safety for the players. Zeb, what would it take for you to stop being a fan of the Seahawks?
Honestly, I would probably have to stop being a fan of football first. Like, they would have to ruin football, and I would probably then slowly stop caring about the Seahawks. That's pretty much it. I mean, if Pittsburgh lost to the Steelers, like they moved to Tallahassee or wherever,
right?
And then a couple years later, Paul Allen was like, I'm moving the Seahawks to Pittsburgh, and they're going to be the Steelers now.
Oof.
Then I'd probably quit watching.
Ooh, that's awful.
And it probably works with San Francisco. But other than, even if the team moved, I'd probably still follow them. I'd have to. I love professional football so much that I couldn't give it up. I just wouldn't be able to.
So if Paul Allen moves the Seahawks to Portland, Zeb dies a happy man.
I don't want them to leave Seattle by any means. I don't want them. I mean, if they moved to Portland, I'd probably go to games and stuff. Why wouldn't I? Right? Like, I'm here, but obviously I prefer that they just be the Seattle Seahawks for the rest of my life. And then I have no problems. But there's not what could they do? Like if they threatened to murder my mom, maybe I'd stop watching.
Zeb's mom's a nice lady. Leave her alone, Seahawks.
Exactly. But there's no political issue there's nothing they could do that would make me no longer a Seahawks fan. There's things that could happen, like I said, that would disconnect me from football or from professional sports, something like that. Like if something was a big enough deal that I thought me separating myself from that would make a difference, a positive difference, then yeah, that's one thing. But assuming that, there's still a National Football League and they're not, becoming terrorists, I don't know. You know what I mean? I don't even know. I can't imagine a scenario.
You have to go to such extremes to get to that point.
I'm not watching this team anymore. That just wouldn't happen.
Yeah. What about you, Ross?
I can imagine taking a break. And I actually have thought of taking a break at one point. I'll give you the easiest example that comes to mind. when there were slight rumors that the Seahawks would be interested in Michael Vick, I don't think I could cheer for a team that did that. And people are like, well, they have wife beaters and things like that, but you can forgive that. And I'm like, this is not going to endear me to anybody, but I kind of see that as worse. I mean, like, wife beating and domestic violence is a very, 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 very bad thing, of course. But a lot of that is anger management issues, and you're a bad person, but it happens in the moment, one kind of thing, like you lose control of your passions. But what like Michael Vick did was a dispassionate thing over a period of 2 years as a kind of as a mindset. And that would be a bigger thing for me. Like, I think I'd have to take a break from the regime.
Yeah. So, what I find...
So that's like a time I would take an example. I would take a break, like, until, like, whoever had signed him or decided to sign him was gone.
Right.
The only other thing I can think of is if the U.S. kind of continued on a certain trend that I think is there and became sort of full-on fascist, sort of a fascist type leadership, and the NFL or the Seahawks full-on went in, like, kind of got on board with that kind of thing, I can imagine walking away from the game. But then I wouldn't stop being a Seahawks fan. I think I'd kind of, like, treat it into nostalgia and play, like, old versions of Madden back when, like, football was football kind of thing.
Right.
But that's about it.
Yeah, so what's interesting for me is I've actually had this happen to me. Not on the Seahawks, but from a NBA and a baseball MLB level. So the first sport that I ever loved as a fan was the Seattle Supersonics. So I grew up, was really big fans of them. They were really strong in the 90s. They had terrible uniforms, but I loved them. They were great in NBA Jam. They were really a fun team for a young kid to watch. And I found out as I got older, and this is before they moved, that I didn't really care for the game of basketball. I liked the Sonics. I liked the way that they played. I liked the players that they had. And this is after they went from Sean Kemp and Gary Payton to guys like Ray Allen and Rashard Lewis. And they had a good coach. But the game itself, the game of basketball, definitely lost me when it became, the Kobe Bryant and Shaq, and we just get a guy, big guy, have him basically, backpedal into the key and then throw up a basket and draw a foul and kick it out. That was really boring to me. That was the Phil Jackson style of basketball, and I really didn't like it. And then once the team moved, then I was like, okay, well, I'm done with basketball. I've watched maybe one whole game, and the Sonics left, getting close to 10 years here. On the baseball side, the ownership, basically didn't care about winning. Like they proved that they tied a record for the most wins of a Major League Baseball team, and they said that was it. They were fine with that. They didn't need a win. And 2 years of that, I said, okay, well, I'm not going to be a fan of your team anymore. And they haven't been to the playoffs in 16 plus years. I feel bad for all the Mariner fans out there. So I have found myself in situations where I haven't been a fan. Now, one of the biggest differences, I can watch anyone play football at the NFL. Like, I will watch the crappy Thursday night games that they throw at us, and I'll still, like, enjoy it way more than any other sport. I don't know any other sport where I could be so entertained. Like, the Thursday night game last week with the Rams and the Niners, that ended up being a great, entertaining game. And I was just like, well, I'm just going to check it out because I've got nothing else to do at 9 o'clock at night. So I don't see the sport and the NFL getting to that level. I don't see myself, especially with this current ownership, with this current coaching staff, to get to that level. It would take a lot. We're talking about extremes here. In the other professional sports, I felt it was very different because it was circumstances where I wasn't the biggest fan of the sport itself. I was a fan of the team, and that's probably the biggest issue with those two sports comparative to football.
I had one period when I was about 20, and it was about 12 months long, where I think girls were more important to me than football. And I believe I missed some games during that section of my life. Other than that, since 1988 or 87, since I was like a 9-year-old kid, I've watched every single Seahawks game except for the ones that were blacked out like they used to do, and then I'd listen to them on the radio. You know what I mean? Like,
That's hardcore.
and then maybe once or twice at a 10 a.m. game, I didn't get up in time and missed the beginning of the game, something like that. But it's me. It's a connection to my childhood. It's a connection to my, my family. Like, there's all this stuff that's makes football, and in particular the Seahawks, be more important than just, a guy watching sports on TV. To me, that's how I feel about it. So it would take a lot for that to change for me.
For me, there's an interesting parallel. Like, it sounds stupid, but between like the internet and my Seahawks fandom, because moving to Japan in 1996, it's pretty isolated at that time. There's internet, but it's dial-up, and essentially you're just reading you're just reading box scores. And then at some point, I discovered message boards so I could actually talk to the Seahawks fans, and then the internet got a little bit better, and you could listen to the games like on the radio type, the radio broadcast. And then eventually you could kind of watch it. Like, the NFL offered game package. You could sort of watch it, but it kept having to buffer and things like that. And then then eventually you could actually see it in proper. Then you could see it HD. So every year I've been able to actually be more and more involved. It's kind of funny because when I first got here, you're a Seahawks fan, but you're living in Tokyo in 1996. It basically means you read the box score that week. So now, I mean, that's literally what it meant. And now, you can be more involved actually than other people because there's so much on the internet, and the NFL actually favors you if you're overseas. They offer a lot more available to you on. So
yeah,
it's actually quite incredible.
I think a lot of it, what has to do is, obviously we're huge fans of football. We're huge fans of the Seahawks. It's hard for us to flip that switch and say, hey, this is the defining thing that separates from me being a fan today versus me being a fan tomorrow. And that's actually a great way for us to talk about topic number 4. And topic number 4 is, some argue that sports and politics should never mix. Could football avoid such a collision when it gets pulled into the spotlight? And for those of you that are living under a rock, Friday night in Alabama, the President of the United States called out and said, wouldn't it be great if any of those NFL football players were kneeling, where the owners just said, you're fired. Then he realized that was his catchphrase, and then said it way more intense the second time, and struck a pose. It's cartoonish, but that's the world we live in right now.
And called them sons of bitches.
Oh yeah, I apologize. That's almost one of the biggest.
Don't forget
points.
that.
He called them sons of bitches, and it's one thing I think for us to think about. Okay, how does stadium financing work with the local taxpayer, and do they want to pay for it? And should we try to pit this special program versus building these toys for billionaire owners? This is a totally different conversation. We've talked about this a lot, not only in our podcast, but offline. And if you haven't, go to hawkscast.com. We have a bunch of topics about this topic in particular. Share your thoughts. We'd love to hear from you. But we've also talked about the influence of Colin Kaepernick. We've talked about the influence of Michael Bennett. We talked about the incident that he had in Las Vegas and why he is protesting. He's not protesting the anthem. He's protesting injustice. And that's kind of some of the frustration. So, but before we get into that, Ross, what do you think about this collision of sports and politics?
I mean, I'm sympathetic to a lot of people who don't want their sports to be mixed, to be infected with politics. Because a lot of the times that's why we watch sports. So we can put our day-to-day concerns aside. So we don't have to worry about the bills. We don't have to worry about who to vote for. We don't have to worry about the tax rate. We don't have to worry about, are we going to war for a few hours? I just want to watch my game. And 99% of the time, I sympathize. I get that. I agree. That's it's an escape for me as well. But I think that there's times in countries' experience, I think there's things that happen where you actually, it switches. That if you're going to ignore what's happening in society, if you expect your athletes to ignore what's happening in society, then you've become the opposite thing. And that's why, for me, for example, last year when we talked about Kaepernick taking a knee, I don't mind him doing it, but I didn't think it was really particularly effective, and maybe I'm wrong now. And I also don't think that he conveyed his message very clearly and things. But fine, go ahead and do it. But I didn't think it was particularly effective. For me, some people think this past week the message got off base, but for me, actually, it became a time where actually being off base was actually more important. Like when you have a president interceding, you have a president telling people to shut up and sit down. That's when exactly people should stand up. And so people felt like that's taking away from the message because that's not what it was really about and things like that. But that's exactly when you do have to reply. Like when the government itself, when the president himself is saying, "You're a son of a bitch for protesting," that's exactly when the people have to say, "No. You don't get to say that. You are the last person who gets to say that. People in power don't tell the people who put you in power what to do." And that in context with everything else that I think the current administration has stood for. He's attacked the independent judiciary. He's attacked the election process, casting doubt on whether it's effective or not. He's cast doubt on just about everything else that essentially, to me, you can interpret it. It's sort of undermining the foundations of our democracy, and then telling people, shut up, sit down, shut up, just respect the flag, just respect the flag. That's a dangerous, dangerous message. It's a dangerous, dangerous trend. And I think America's a somewhat possible. It's hard to see when you're in the middle of it, but I feel like it's possible in 20 years we're going to see this time as a crossroads, and you're the type to stand up and say, "Hey, you know what? I'm gonna stand up and protest just because you said I can't." I think you're on the right side.
Zeb, what about you and all the crazy people attacking your Facebook feed?
All right. Well, I have a couple of different ways I want to talk about this, so I'll try to keep a straight frame of reference and mindset here. Okay, so I personally think that, first of all, I don't like to call what's happening right now necessarily politics. To me, what Colin Kaepernick was doing and what the players that followed him were doing were trying to bring awareness to a social issue, I guess. Not so much politics. When I think politics, I'm thinking about elections and voting and things like that. And I think this is more specific than just the broad term politics. Like if teams started saying who to vote for and things like that, that to me, that might be crossing a line. That would be bringing politics into sports. But I think sports, especially professional sports, is the perfect place to bring awareness to social issues and injustices, because it's a stage, a huge stage, a very grand stage where everybody's looking at you. And in particular, a lot of these guys come from places where these injustices are the most. They happen the most, and they affect people the most. So for them to come from, say, a rough neighborhood where the police were, constantly harassing people and looking for ways to get people arrested, or and they've made it past that and they've gotten through it, and now they've made it to where they are. They're famous. They make money. People look up to them. They have a voice. They have a platform. Hell yeah, they should bring it up. Hell yeah, they should talk about it. Especially where, with the climate, where the temperature, where things are at now about this stuff, I think it's absolutely good. And I think that they should be doing it. I think it's their responsibility at this point. So Friday, when 45 said what he said, it instantly bothered me more than anything else he's said. And he's said a lot of things that have bothered me. Sort of, yeah, because it's about something that I love very much. But more than that, because, like you were talking about, Ross, I think it's a big step in the wrong direction, just generally speaking. I don't like to use the word fascism necessarily because I don't think it's anywhere near that yet, but it's a step. So that pissed me off. Like, you don't get to do that. You don't get to tell employers what to do with their employees like that. That's what freedom, that's the opposite of freedom. It's bullshit. It's not cool. It's not allowed. And I was really happy to see the stand that was taken against it on Sunday morning when I got up. It made me super proud and super happy to see specifically the Seahawks and the Titans not even take the field for the national anthem. But now see, I've after having a few days to kind of digest it, I've chilled out a little bit on that, and I almost don't feel that it was the best thing for them to do. I really feel like by not taking the field. What's that?
I said bingo. I think you're about to hit on.
I feel like by not taking the field, they both protected players that weren't willing to take a stand against what he said, and I think they kept the players that would have taken a stand from doing so.
Did you hear what the newly acquired tackle Matt Tobin said?
I don't think I did, huh?
So Matt Tobin, he is a newly acquired Seahawk. He'd only been in the team for a month. He told Pete Carroll and the players that had organized it and said, like, hey, I'm really uncomfortable with this. But having been around you guys, I understand how important this is to you. So I'm going to basically stifle my views and, stay in the locker room with everyone else. I really want to be on the field for the anthem. It's really important to me for what it represents, what he thinks it represents, but he chose to stay in the locker room. He and 5 other players had expressed he's the only one to actually come out and say such. What's interesting is he and the 6 players total, they're all white. They all said that they were very uncomfortable with this. And what Michael Bennett says is, this is what it's about. It's about making people uncomfortable. And obviously this is a new story for you guys, but I found it really interesting. One, you have a person who's willing to admit, like, hey, I'm really uncomfortable. I don't know how to deal with this. Like, this goes against what I think I want to do. That's a good thing. That's a positive, because when you're uncomfortable, you're maybe more willing and more open to seeing a perspective that you might not have been before. Because if you're comfortable, if you're resolute, you can defend, no problem at all. But if you're on your toes, if you're not sure where things are going, maybe something slips through, and then you hear what you need to hear to kind of maybe open your mind more. And I look at this as a positive, but I think to your point, Zeb, there were a lot of people that said they wanted to do more. Russell Wilson said he wanted to do more, and that's kind of a shock. I can't remember any other quarterback in the NFL other than Colin Kaepernick over this past weekend, and there were over 200 people that on the field that either took a knee or did something in a protest of sorts. He's the only quarterback that I know that said, like, I wanted to do more. I want to do more than just not be on the field. And to me, that's really, really interesting.
Yeah, it really is. I hadn't heard that.
Really quickly, my 2 cents, because I want to talk to you guys about this a little bit more. I am vehemently against the idea that sports and politics should not mix. I think it's a terrible idea, and the reason why I think it's a terrible idea is sports brings people of all different backgrounds, socioeconomic, race, sex, demographic, earning potential. We're 3 very different people. We all love sports. We all love football. And that's the great thing about sports. It brings people of different backgrounds together, and they can unify in themselves their love for a sport, for the team. And with that, you get people of different backgrounds, different, ideas, different desires. And they meld together. And for a little bit, I can forget that you are vehemently opposed to what I am, strongly for, because we're rooting for a team. But it maybe opens us up so that we actually have a discussion. Maybe we don't change each other's minds, but we give each other perspective. And that's something that I think is really important about sports. And I like when sports and politics, or in this case, social injustice and social and, divides can come together. Because we have seen historically how important sports have been to the political landscape. Jackie Robinson, Billie Jean King, the Munich Olympics, all these different athletes, all these different people have had this great influence in what we are able to see years and years later. They're a catalyst. And I think that's something that people often forget, or people are unwilling to see. Sports and politics have a long connection and a long history together. And there is a lull. There is a time when, things don't look smooth. But at the end of it, I think we as a country, and for a lot of times the sports are better for it. I mean, could you imagine a time where there is no black quarterback? Could you imagine a time where there are no Asian players playing baseball? Could you imagine a time where Latin American players weren't on the field, or there weren't any of these things that we have culturally become more and more accepted toward because of things like sports? So I have always hated the fact that people say sports and politics don't mix. I think they're a great combination. It's just hard if you're just unused to the change that they really try to drive and the things that they can do to bring people together.
Yeah, I think I agree with you 100%. I think that's pretty much my feelings on it as well. Like, they can't be separated. You can't separate the things, because this isn't a TV show with actors. This is real people who are going through real things, who have real experiences. If people of color are being disproportionately shot in the street by police, and you're a person of color, and you're successful, and how do you feel if you don't say something about it, right? Like, are you above it now because you got rich or whatever? Not that not everybody is going to be able to do something or say something. It's, it takes a certain kind of person to have the courage to do that. But I mean, yeah, I think when you get to that certain level, you have a responsibility to at least, at the very minimum, bring awareness. And I think that's exactly what kneeling during the anthem did, was attempt to bring awareness. And you may say the message was mixed, or people don't think Colin Kaepernick, what he did was effective or whatever. But I mean, look where we're at now. You cannot turn on the TV without hearing about this right now. So obviously,
but there's still that issue, though, isn't there? Because now we're 4 days on, and if I ask 10 different people what last Sunday meant, I feel like right now I get 10 different answers.
Oh, for sure.
If I ask what it meant if I ask what the Seahawks meant by staying in the locker room, among us three, I feel like we get 2.5 different answers.
Oh, for sure. There's no question that would be the issue.
I think some people think staying in the locker room itself was a protest, although that's clearly they've said exactly the opposite. They said, like, they didn't want to put people in a position to be highlighted where they are protesting or they're not protesting, right?
Now, there is a clear difference, though. There's a clear difference between the Steelers, when they chose to sit in the locker room, versus the Seahawks. I think there's a very clear distinction based upon what you're hearing from the coaches, and also
I don't know. Like, reading Seahawks sites, the impression I got was they didn't want people to feel isolated. They wanted to do whatever they're going to do. They all wanted to came up that everybody was to do.
Right. Now, but that is paying respect to the people that are not looking to protest, that are not comfortable.
But here's my point right here. You read the same thing I did, and we've both come away with slightly different nuanced meaning of it.
No. But I want to compare it against what the Steelers said. Are you familiar with what the Steelers said when they came out?
Yeah.
So the Steelers said they are sitting in the locker room to avoid all political reference to the anthem and to the protest and to what the president said. So they were removing themselves completely from the equation.
So, but is the guy watching in Houston, hearing about the Seahawks game and just hearing about the game, he's going to make the nuanced difference?
But,
I mean,
that's a struggle.
do you want to convey your message? You actually change. And if you're trying to enact change, I feel like, again, at the time, you saw me. I was posting to you guys. I was pretty excited when I first even saw the Pittsburgh people. I was pretty excited on Sunday, but I'm a little bit like on Zeb's side. 4 days later, I feel almost it's undercut the message. I feel like the players aren't doing it, but not again, like, this is like, don't kneel for the flag. I don't feel like they're doing enough unified work to actually get the actual pinpoint clear message across. It's one of the, if you're going to demonstrate, if you're going to protest, the number one rule is you have to control their message. Gandhi didn't let Britain decide what his message was protesting, right?
Right. And I think there's a problem.
The players are, because there is no message.
But the problem stems from the fact that that's true. I 100% agree with you. I think the Seahawks have been consistent with their message, but the other 31 teams...
What did the Titans mean? Zeb, tell me. What did the Titans mean when they didn't mean?
Well, I don't know what the Titans meant. I haven't listened.
And that's the problem. Isn't that the problem?
But Ross, that is the problem, and we're agreeing with you, but we can't. We're the Seahawks fan table. We're focusing on the Seahawks.
I know. I'm just frustrated.
I agree with you. It is an issue and it's a problem, but the Seahawks are going to be the best ones to respond to it. The Seahawks are going to be the ones that have been constantly praised for the fact that they have been much more receptive. They've been much more aggressive. They've been much better about their messaging. Yes,
well, they've got the smartest group of players in favor. You put like Bennett and Baldwin and Sherman, and these days all of a sudden Russell Wilson together in a room. You got some pretty smart guys and articulate guys.
Yeah, and the problem is the 31 other teams don't, and I think the problem that we're seeing with the 31 other teams is they were reacting to the fact that the president was telling them what to do. You know, this included several owners that had funded money into his presidential campaign, that had given money to his inauguration. We're talking about Dan Snyder, we're talking about Jerry Jones, we're talking about Shad Khan in Jacksonville. All three of those owners sat on the field. They either were linked arm to arm with their players during the anthem. Jerry Jones took a knee before the anthem. I don't really know what that meant, but people still booed them anyway because they weren't doing anything during the anthem. But, you know, obviously just taking a knee upsets people. And the issue for a lot of those teams and a lot of players that said, I'll never take a knee, and then who took a knee this past Sunday, for them, it wasn't about the protest. It wasn't about inequality. It was about, you can't tell me what to do. And I think that's going to be a problem, and that's what we're going to see a big difference between this Sunday and what we see with the Seahawks on Sunday.
What do you think, Zeb? Zeb, I want Zeb to summarize.
Well, I'm trying very hard to see your side of it, because the problem is, and this happens with every single protest that I've paid attention to in my adult life, which is the people who are upset by it say, we don't even know what they're protesting. You know, it's very hard to get a single solitary message out when you're dealing with a large group of people who all have different views and different lives and different ways they look at things. I think it's pretty okay, so for example, you can go to blacklivesmatter.com and read exactly what Black Lives Matter, the group, stands for, what they believe, what they want. But if you ask the average white person on the street, what does Black Lives Matter want? They'll say, I don't know. They don't even know what they want. You know, they don't have a unified voice or whatever, but it's all right. It's right there. You have to want to understand what people are upset about, what people are protesting, to really understand it.
I agree with you to a degree. I mean, people have to be receptive. That's true. But you can also be so effective at getting your message across that people know what you... I mean, no, there wasn't anybody who didn't know what Della... wasn't anybody who didn't know what she wanted. They might disagree with the details and things like that. But again, I mean, it's funny because this, in my opinion, should be going through the NFL players. And they've just reelected their very, very ineffective president who doesn't do anything and is very ineffective on this issue. And that's the sad part of it. They have they have something in place that this all could be going through, the NFLPA, but it's not going through that because it's totally ineffective. Then there's a framework in place to deal with this, and they should, so they could coordinate. And again, where is the takeaknee.com website that I talked about last season that should be there? I mean, because this isn't BLM, this isn't Black Lives Matter. Kaepernick isn't talking about it. I mean, he's not talking about it, but he's not doing this as a completely in correlation with them. That's not what Russell Wilson's talking about.
Colin Kaepernick isn't Martin Luther King or Gandhi. Colin Kaepernick is more like Rosa Parks. He did a thing because he believed that it was the right thing to do, and it started a movement. He's not the leader. He's not the guy who is writing out the bullet points of what he expects.
I agree. So, but that means now we need that person to come forward to give this context.
Well, we might not get that person, and
well, you know what happens. You know what happens to movements that don't. Again, at this, I'm not against you, Zeb. Not against you.
No. I know. What I was going to say is we might not get that person, and because of that, this might not ever be as fully effective as it could be if we did get that person. But
you have to have
the early stages of raising awareness, of getting people talking, of making the start of something that could potentially turn into something. I think it's been very effective in that manner. It hasn't fixed a single thing yet, and it's not even close to fixing anything, but it's at least got the attention of people. Now, what happens next? I don't know. That's not really up to me. I don't know who that's up to.
So I think that's the thing where you're going to see the Seahawks come out and do more things. Last year, Doug Baldwin, whose father is a police officer, he talked to a lot of local police departments in Seattle, talked about effective ways that they could better help. And, we don't know what changes that's going to result in. We don't know if it means anything. But those kind of things, those actions by the Seahawks, I think will really propel this further. I understand your frustration with this, Ross, and what I read that as is you don't want it to be wasted. And I think there are a lot of people out there that are probably sharing that same concern, saying, okay, well, where do we go from here? What are steps 2, 3, 4, and 5?
But I think you have. Let me
finish, Ross.
Last week may have been like a giant.
Ross, let me finish here.
Sorry, go ahead.
I think the one thing that you have to understand is this is not some mass conglomerate unification that we need it to be, because people understand they put a bullseye on their back, and athletes, not all of them are willing to do that. The Seahawks players have shown that their willingness to speak out means that they have the fortitude, they have the financial means, they have the responsibility, or any of those things that they are willing to take on that task. And they've said as such. They said, hey, Pete Carroll said, I want to focus on football. Richard Sherman has said, okay, yeah, that was the appetizer. Now we got to work on the main course. That's the projection that the Seahawks are going to. And I know that's not going to be everybody. And it's not going to say that Richard Sherman or Doug Baldwin or Russell Wilson or Michael Bennett is going to lead the revolution. But if anyone is, they are the best people to do that. And I'm looking forward to see what happens next. I know that's not right away, but I'm willing to see what they are going to do. And I'm really excited.
Can I share my fear? My fear is that last week, essentially, basically was a sort of like a buy-off, a bribe, a throwing of a bone,
an appeasement. I agree with you. For 31 other teams, it's an appeasement.
I agree as well, 100%.
Reading from GMs and coaches and front office types and even some players this week, it feels like, okay, so we all made our point last week that we could stick it to the president when we needed to. It's announced by football.
Oh yeah, for sure. John Elway, the president of the Broncos, earlier this year wrote on Broncos stationery and said, I support the Supreme Court Justice Neil Gorsuch, and he just recently said, I don't think sports and politics should mix on Broncos letterhead.
Come on. Yeah, come on, dude.
So I am 100% with you. For the 31 other teams, this is a one-time thing. A lot of them are not going to do it. It's going to be water under the bridge, and it's going to be back to football. That's not just Seahawks. And I think that's a very fair thing to be worried about.
Because even Pete Carroll sounded very much like, okay, there's a time and a place, and we got to get our football stuff in shape first, too.
And that's what his job is as a coach. He's going to support his players, but he's going to say, hey, we need to get back on track. I 100%.
And he's not wrong, to be honest. I mean, like Bennett and Russell Wilson and Richard Sherman and Doug Baldwin, their message and their voice is going to be that much bigger if we're a playoff team and not a 6-10 team. to be honest.
I got to be honest. Watching Jerry Jones take a knee on the field with the team pretty much destroyed my thoughts of what was happening that day. It was like if you spent the entire day building a house of cards, and then you set the very last one on top, and the whole thing fell apart. And Jerry Jones was the last card on the top of the house of cards.
No,
we'll see. I mean,
I agree with you guys. I think there's concern to be had. I think there is this element that, hey, we're, the 31 other teams, they're done with this. They're ready to move on. I think that's going to be a big concern, and it will be really interesting because we've got a game tomorrow, Chicago and Green Bay. Green Bay.
Aaron Rodgers is kind of stepping up, man.
Yeah, I mean, but that's the thing. Like, are we going to see something in the press conference, or are we going to see something at the beginning? Like, this is
Aaron Rodgers said he wants all the Green Bay fans themselves to link arms. See?
Yeah.
But again, what does he mean when he says?
And what does he want to gain out of that? I mean, that shows unity, but what are you unified towards? Is it unifying to say, like, hey, let's move on, or like
linking arms doesn't do it for me,
right? That's the compromise. That's the compromise that the Seahawks made
but if
last
you can
year.
get 60,000 people to do it at the same time, that's not like. I mean, I agree. Like 60 players linking arms in the field is kind of vanilla to me. But if you can get a stadium to link arms, it means something. I don't know what it means.
Well,
I mean, it would be beautiful to see that, like a beautiful show of unity, But it's not.
I mean, but at the same time, North Korea gets to that all the time, don't they? They have like the 100th stadium with the colored cards.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
okay,
what I say is, if you have more thoughts, not only to the three of us, but if you're listening to this later on, please go to hawkscast.com. We have a lot of topics on this and in various versions. Check it out. We'd love to hear your thoughts. We'd love to talk to you about it. I know the Seahawks are going to continue, but we will be pulling a Pete Carroll, and we're going to be focusing and moving forward. So, talk a little bit about our fantasy updates. So, 3-step drop, Maddie, Lior, and Coleman. A couple shout outs to myself. I won my first game, so congratulations to me.
Congratulations.
Zeb, unfortunately, you lost out because Dan Bailey didn't kick any field goals, so I'm sorry about that.
And I lost because Dan Bailey kicked extra points.
Yeah, that was another league, though. Ross, you are leading the FanTable Division at 2-1, so good job, sir. The only podcast head-to-head is actually Zeb and Ross this week. In the previous week, we had Maddie and Coleman going head-to-head, and I believe Maddie took the win, so congratulations. So for our fantasy question for this week, do you like to offer trades, or do you like to wait for trades to come into your inbox? Ross, I'm going to ask you this question because I know where I think you are in this equation.
I used to hate trades, and the last couple of years, I'm into it. I send a lot of trades. I send sincere ones, I send fishing ones, and I send ridiculous trades out.
Ross and I actually just accepted a trade in one of our other leagues, but Ross definitely loves to send me trades. Zeb, what about you?
I don't know. I don't offer a lot of trades, and I don't get a lot of offers. I
offered you one, you never even noticed it, man. although we did trade, didn't we?
You guys consummated a trade.
We tried 5 or 6 different combos, and we finally found one that worked.
We did.
I think I ended up taking Darren Sproles off you.
Yeah, you did.
Which honestly was fine because I didn't care about him. I ended up dropping him like a week later anyway. I just wanted Brandon Cooks, which so far has paid off pretty well for me.
Nice.
And now Sproles is on IR anyways.
Yeah.
But I'd already long dropped him. I don't know. I think about 98% of the trades I offer or get offered just end up being declined anyway. So they're fun. It's fun when they work, though. That's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I got Emmanuel Sanders. I forget.
You traded for Emmanuel Sanders?
We essentially swapped Emmanuel Sanders and Brandon Cooks. That's the way
I
was looking at it.
I wanted the other guy, though. That was why I also made the trade. I knew Emmanuel Sanders was slightly less picks, but I wanted the other person. I can't remember even who it was. Awesome.
I'm in a couple leagues with Ross, so I just wait for him to send me trades, and I just reject 95% of them.
Yeah, even the reasonable.
This most recent one was the most reasonable. But also, I had 3 quarterbacks on my team, and I didn't want the guy that you ended up taking, so worked out for me. All right, let's talk about some predictions. So we're just gonna ran off some predictions here. Final score: Seahawks and Colts. What do you guys got?
38-17.
Ooh, that's a lot of points.
Yeah, I'm going 41-17, which
Ooh,
I think mirrors
even more points.
Our game against the Jaguars back in 2013, I think, if I remember correctly.
I'm thinking
Right.
because of the rain, Seahawks are gonna win, but it's gonna be more like 21-10. Gonna be kind
You're
of
pretty confident about a rain, man. Isn't it like Wednesday there now? You still got like 5 days, man.
Hey man, the forecast. I trust the
The
weatherman.
weather changes a lot.
I trust the weatherman. All right, who's gonna have the better game, Russell Wilson or Jacoby Brissett?
Russell Wilson.
Russell Wilson.
Russell Wilson.
If it's not Russell Wilson, we're probably not going to win. So I'm saying Russell Wilson. Who's going to have the better rushing game? Seahawks running backs or Colts running backs? I don't even. It's Frank Gore versus whoever we throw out. Chris Carson, I suppose.
Seahawks.
Carson.
I'm thinking it's going to be the Colts. I think Frank Gore is gonna just rip off like one big run, and that's going to kind of give him a rushing edge.
For old time's sake.
Yeah. Who's going to be inactive, Lacey or Rawls?
I hope Lacey. I'd like to see them get Rawls more involved.
Prosise seems pretty hurt, so I think they'll probably both be active.
Yeah, they might both be active, but if you had to choose one,
if I had it, it's going to be Lacey. Lacey doesn't do anything for you anymore, does he?
I think Rawls will actually be inactive. I think he's still nursing something. There's got to be something there where he's
what if
just
got,
looking
turf toe?
effective. He's got something.
He's got a bruised ego.
Yeah.
You got herpes.
All right. Who's gonna first to be IR'd? Thomas Rawls or CJ Prosise?
Prosise.
Prosise.
Prosise by a nose.
By a nose? Yeah. I mean, Ross,
By a toe.
you
Turf toe.
You
I'm
posted this
joking.
on
I
the
don't
site.
think I think Prosise will be IR'd and Lacey's. I think Lacey's going to be released. That's a lot of money to pay a dude just to sit on your bench or be inactive. They're not going to do
It's
that.
3 points. He's getting paid $3.6 million. It's not that much.
A lot of that they've done in the past. They've released veteran relatively high salary people before.
Yeah, but again, it's the philosophy and the personnel. They don't match up right now. So you
Like
you
Braylon
could totally be
Edwards.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I just don't. When it gets to the home stretch, when we're in December, I don't expect to see Lacey on the Seahawks anymore.
I think that's very possible. All right, time of possession. We're going to go over under 25 minutes. The season average through 3 games is 28 minutes.
I'm going to go under.
All right, Ross is going to say under 25 minutes of
Because
time of possession.
not in a bad way this time. I think they're going to have a few quick scores. And I think they may even score like on special teams, which means because the other team gets more extra possessions.
Okay.
So I think it'll be under.
I agree that we're going to get some quick scores. I don't know if that's going to put us under 25, though. I'll go over just for the sake of it, but probably like 20, 26, 27.
I'm going to go over because I think it's going to be pretty close to even because I'm projecting a lower scoring game. Rushing TDs. So the Seahawks have had 0 rushing TDs this year. Do they get a rushing TD on Sunday?
No.
Yeah, they're going to do it. They're going to break the seal, and then it's just going to be a flood after that.
If they do, it'll be Russell Wilson.
Interesting. I'm going to say it's Chris Carson because he's on my fantasy team and I'm rooting for him. All right, false starts. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of crowd we get Sunday night. But over under 2.5 false starts. So you're either saying they're going to.
There's ours.
Seattle's going to force how many false starts on defense? Are they going to force 3 or 2? That's the way you can look at it.
I'm going to go 1. I think those days are kind of behind.
All right, false start under. All right, Zeb.
I think those days are kind of behind us too, but I think this weekend's going to be different. I think we'll go 3.
All right, I'm going to go with over. I'm going to be very optimistic and think that the Seahawks will be able to get to a Jacoby Brissett and kind of get him a little bit rattled because young quarterbacks don't tend to.
I think
do well
maybe
in Seattle.
combine it with some delay of games. Maybe we seem to get more delay of games these actual.
Or burns
they-
of a timeout.
delay games and forcing that seems to happen more now. Like teams have adjusted what to do with the noise, but the way they adjust is like a longer system to call the play, so the Sinners have to call a time. If you include those, then I'd say over.
All right. So this is a new thing that Ross wants us to do. I'm assuming this is going to be for the upcoming game, so we're going to add this more to our predictions. What are the grades that you want to give out to the offensive line? What do you think they're going to do? Zeb.
Like a letter grade?
Letter grade. Yeah. What are you going to grade them at?
C.
Okay. Ross?
I think they're I think they're trending up. I think they're going to go maybe B+.
I'm going to say C+. I don't think they're better, but they're not there yet.
I almost said C-. So
you're a strict grader.
All right, defensive line.
It's on a curve.
Defensive line at home.
Oh, A.
A? Zeb A?
Yeah, they're going to smash.
A-.
A-. Man, that death row, as good as they're looking, I think they're not hitting their stride yet, and they're maybe getting too many snaps. I don't think they have the right depth. I'm going to give them a B-.
Last week was brutal, man. 2 pressures, no sacks.
Yeah.
Hey,
zero pressures.
Minus my is anus.
Russell Wilson.
I think the kid's going to ball out. I think he's going to have a great game. I'm going to give Russell Wilson an A.
All right. Was that?
I'm going to disagree with the in the rain comment. I'm going to B+.
B+. I'm going to give Russell Wilson like a C. Historically, he's not played well in the rain. I know this is a primetime game, but I'm just really concerned about it. I'm going to be playing him in a lot of my fantasy leagues, but I will be concerned. Running game, Seahawks running game. What do you think we're going to do? Zeb?
B minus.
All right.
Somewhere in there.
That's like 100+ yards. Ross, what about you?
Give or take.
85, but it's going to be where they count. Oh, you know what? Just the running backs, I think it's going to be like 75. But I think Russell Wilson's going to. They're going to. I was mad they didn't go to the read option much last week, and I think that hurt. I think they're going to go back to that, and I think, including Russell Wilson in the running game, there'll be a B.
Running game will be. I'm optimistic. I think it'll be a B. Obviously, we're trying to compensate for our terrible offensive line, who I'm rated as a C. But I'd be happy to give them a B. Shoutouts, gentlemen. Ross, any shoutouts this week?
Well, shout out Tony because I haven't heard from him for a week, so I must be mad because I didn't.
Zeb, any shoutouts?
Shout out to Joey Guns. Shout out to Smoke M2D6. Shout out to Honorary Osborne over there, European Union, and check out triplebpodcast.com. Episode 65 was up as of Monday at noon. Give it a listen.
It's a doozy. It's a good one. I'm about halfway through that new one. Had to take a break for work. So I want to give a couple shout outs to my coworkers, ZG, #ZGLife. Thank you guys for checking out our podcast. Please go to hawkscast.com. Check out our website. We're on Twitter at Seahawks Podcast. We're on Facebook at Seahawks FanTable. We're online with the forum at forum.hawkscast.com or just hawkscast.com. But thank you for listening.
We're everywhere.
I am Sam. They are Zeb and Ross. And go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Hawks.